Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 18th of June of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where during the previous 24 hours both the Russians and the Ukrainians were attacking each other with hundreds of drones. And first of all, we will once again discuss the situation around the city of Moscow. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the Ukrainians used 555 drones to attack the capital of the Russian Federation. The Russians stated that most of these drones were brought down, but the videos that were published by different sources show us completely different pictures. According to all these videos, the drones that were launched by the armed forces of Ukraine managed to break through layered air defense of the Russian Federation and to strike the Moscow oil refinery. As a result of this attack, the Moscow's oil refinery was significantly damaged. A lot of facilities on the territory of this refinery was probably completely destroyed. During the previous 24 hours, lots of videos were published on this matter by pro-Russian sources. In this picture, we can see facilities that were hit by the Ukrainians. As you can see, there are up to 7 facilities, 7 different parts of this refinery that were damaged by the Ukrainians and probably even maybe destroyed. The Ukrainian attack ended somewhere around at 10 or 11 a.m. of the 18th of June of 2026, and when this attack ended, the Russians began to stabilize situation. During the previous 24 hours, lots of videos were published by pro-Russian sources where we could see how the Russians were using all means, helicopters, fire teams, with the purpose to stabilize the situation and to extinguish the fire. And the sources reported that by the end of the 18th of June of 2026, the Russians managed to extinguish the fire completely and to stabilize the situation. Now the most important question is whether the Ukrainians are going to attack the city of Moscow once again during the upcoming night. During the previous day, lots of sources reported that the Ukrainians most likely will continue attacking the capital of the Russian Federation, trying to force the president of the Russian Federation to accept demands of the Western countries and of the European leaders. And we don't know for sure whether the Ukrainians are going to carry out this attack or not, but we know for sure that the Russians are going to attack the territory of Ukraine during the upcoming night or during the next 48 hours. The Russians have already finished the necessary preparations. The Russians are going to use strategic aviations, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, and hundreds of drones. Meanwhile, we start receiving reports that the European countries began announcing about additional military help to Ukraine. Belgium, for example, will deliver 7 additional F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine this year. This is a very important situation. Another important thing is that, for example, Netherlands will send Ukraine 500 million euros in weapons. That was stated by Defense Minister of the state. And we start receiving that more and more countries are announcing about additional military support to Ukraine. We received something similar from the United Kingdom, which means that during the next months, the Ukrainians will receive lots of money for the military purposes. And the European countries are sending weapons to Ukraine based on the videos they receive from the city of Moscow. And if the European countries see more videos of this type from the territory of the Russian Federation, then most likely the European countries will send more weapons to Ukraine with the purpose to attack the territory of the Russian Federation. So as we can see, this is just basically the beginning of summer. This is the beginning of the summer military campaign, but we see that the situation is already very difficult both for Russians and for the Ukrainians. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians also attacked the territory of Ukraine. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine stated that the Russians used 246 drones and missiles to attack the territory of Ukraine. Lots of explosions were recorded through the city of Kiev. Up to 8 Iskander ballistic missiles were used by Russians, and several cruise missiles of the new type by the name of Banderol. And according to media, according to information we have, the Russians were attacking mainly the city of Poltava, Poltava. As a result of attack, the Poltava oil refinery was destroyed. So this facility was destroyed according to fire anomalies that were recorded by NASA. So this facility was damaged, and the Russians reported that they also destroyed another oil depot on the territory of Ukraine. Furthermore, explosions were recorded through different parts of Ukraine. In this video, we can see the settlement of Akhtirka and the 110th object of energy infrastructure. And this infrastructural object, as you can see, was completely destroyed as a result of attack. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the city of Sumy. The sources reported that the Russians attacked another depot, oil depot or fuel depot or ammo depot on the territory of the city. Furthermore, the sources reported that explosions were also recorded through the city of Dnipro. As for the city of Dnipro, this facility, this basically warehouse, was completely destroyed as a result of attack. In this video, we can see first seconds after the Iskander impact, and many other different positions and places were attacked by Russians, but probably nobody was discussing these strikes because we've been receiving all videos, everything from the city of Moscow. Meanwhile, the Russians continue their offensive operation along the line of combat contact, and during the previous 24 hours we received lots of very important updates on this matter. First, let's talk about the most important direction, the Slavyansk-Konstantinovka agglomeration. As you can see, we have a lot of icons, we have a lot of events from this area, and we have very important ones. The Russians, as a result of clashes, managed to establish complete control over the southern parts of the city of Konstantinovka. Now, currently the Russians control the 81st block, the 92nd block, and the quarter of Metallurg. These are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 17th of June of 2026, and this is the end of the 18th of June. The Russians published this video, and here we can see another episode of how Russians were fighting for the settlement of Konstantinovka. And in this video, we can see several episodes how Russians were raising their flag through different parts of the settlement. One of the flags that was raised by Russians was geolocated right exactly at this point. So based on this video, we came to the conclusion that the Russians managed to establish complete control over this part. Probably and very likely there are still pockets of resistance and a small resistance, small pockets from the Ukrainian side, but now these pockets of the Ukrainian resistance have just one task: to escape the cauldron and to get the northern parts of the city. The Russians continue fighting for the settlement. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation during the previous 24 hours reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians established control for more than 98 buildings on the territory of the city, and the Russians continue advancing in the northern direction. In coming days, the city of Konstantinovka will fall, and the Russians will begin the battle for the settlement of Alexeyeva-Drushkovka. Another important area is the eastern Slavyansk direction, or the Slavyansk-Sieversk direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians, as you can see, managed to improve their position significantly as well. This is the end of the 17th of June of 2026. This is the end of the 18th of June of 2026. The Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Rai-Aleksandrovka, and the Russians reported about this with the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, and the Russians published this video. This video shows how exactly the Russians were fighting for the settlement. The battle for the settlement of Rai-Aleksandrovka started several months ago, and during this period of time the Russians were pushing and pushing. Lots of episodes from this video. We can see how the Russians were fighting almost for every single building on the territory of the city of Rai-Aleksandrovka, and during the last part, during the final part of this video, we can see several episodes how Russians were raising their flags through the settlement of Rai-Aleksandrovka in different parts. As a result of this video, we managed to geolocate several flags. The Russians raised the flag in the eastern parts of the settlement, the Russians raised 2 flags in the northwestern parts of the settlement, and the Russians raised at least 3 flags through the central part of the city. Based on this video and based on the report that was published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, we have adjusted the map. The Russians established control over the last citadel before the beginning of the battle for the Slavyansk agglomeration. The Slavyansk agglomeration starts with the settlement of Nikolaevka, which is an eastern part of the settlement. The Russians, most likely in coming days, will begin moving in the northern direction from many directions, and the Russians will try to establish complete control over this big forest, and the Russians would would try to establish complete control over villages along the river of Seversky Donetsk. Due to the fact that the settlement of Rai-Aleksandrovka was captured by Russians, it seems that Ukrainians will not be able to show fierce resistance through the most eastern citadel of the Slavyansk agglomeration through the settlement of Nikolaevka. The Russians most likely would try to take on the complete control over this territory as soon as possible and as fast as possible, with the purpose to answer the eastern Slavyansk agglomeration. It is a very important question for the Russians to begin the battle for the cities of Druzhkovka and Slavyansk. It is very important to show the world, the Western countries and the Ukrainian partners that the Russians are already on the territory of this agglomeration and the main battle has already begun. As of now, the Russians are still 10 or 15 kilometers from this agglomeration, and the Russians would try to shorten the distance in coming days. Another important area is the Crimean direction. As we discussed during the previous video, huge number of fire anomalies was recorded along the Ukraine side of the river of Dnipro, which means that these days the Ukrainians have concentrated significant number of forces along this territory, and it seems that the Ukrainians are preparing themselves before the beginning of the Dnipro landing operation with the purpose to cross the river and to establish complete control over the Russian side of the river of Dnipro. At the same time, the Russians see the situation, and these days the Russians were focused on building additional pontoon bridges between Crimea and the Kherson and Zaporozhye regions with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to land and to cross the river and to land infantry. This battle may be a very decisive one. The Russians see the situation. The question is whether the Russians are able to hold the lines and not to allow the Ukrainians to take these territories under complete control. Because if it happens, this could be another very big media victory for Zelensky, which will allow Ukraine to receive additional weapons from the Western countries and from NATO organization and from the European Union. As for the northern directions, during the previous day, additional changes on the ground were recorded through the Belый Kolodez direction. Today, the group of forces north stated that the Russians answered the settlement of Ukrainska, and currently there are very heavy clashes for the villages of Losivka and Ukrainska. This is a very important update, which means that the Russians continue outflanking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine on the territory of the settlement of Belый Kolodez, and the Russians are about to attack the settlement from behind. The Russians continue their offensive operation along the river of Volcha with the purpose to establish complete control over the river and to begin offensive operation further in the southern direction towards the settlement of Malý Burluk. The Russians continue offensive operation through the settlement of Kazachya Lopань. During the previous 24 hours, additional videos were published by Russians how they were attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine already in the southern parts of the settlement, which means that the Russians are approaching, and the Russians today reported that during the previous 24 hours they managed to approach the settlement of Maiskaya in the Sumy direction. So the Russians continue offensive operation, but it seems that it would be very difficult for Russians to continue advancing along the line of combat contact if the Ukrainians continue attacking deep inside of the territory of Russia using drones, and if the Ukrainians continue attacking oil refineries across the territory of Russia. So the situation is quite complicated. We see that the summer military campaign intensifies, and let's wait and see what is going to happen next. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.